Welcome to the Plutus Foundation webinar series. I'm excited to be here again this week. And our guest today is Bethany McCamish. Bethany is from hisandherfipost.com. And Bethany Works is also where she designs and writes for clients. So welcome, Bethany. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to talk today about pivoting your business. I think this is a topic that's really important right now. People are going through massive changes, whether they're losing their day jobs or need additional money. And there's only so many things you can do with everyone quarantined at home. If, of course, you're not an essential service working for an essential company doing things out there in the world right now. So I think that pivoting is one of the most important skills that you can have as a human. Being able to adjust is going to help you survive throughout your entire life. And it has come incredibly clear now that that is the case now more than ever. So I would love to talk today a little bit about pivoting and how we can build this skill and maybe some tools and techniques for putting it into practice right now, because a lot of people need this information right now. So Bethany, can you talk to me a little bit about what pivoting means and how you may have approached this in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So pivot right now is like a buzzword, right? And it was a buzzword as soon as COVID swept our country and people were finding themselves out of work. They were considering new work opportunities. And so that led to this idea of pivot, both in a business and in a career. So my CV is very long, full of very odd jobs, and I've jumped industries a lot and held multiple jobs once, which is why it's so long. So I've done a pivot a few times, and to pivot, it's combining your knowledge and your transferable skills for a new job or venture. And I say knowledge, not work experience, because through combining both your knowledge and transferable skills, that can translate into experience for new jobs and ventures. So pivoting is a huge change, right? You're changing directions in your business. Maybe you're looking to scale in a career, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have experience to do that. That said, like some examples of a pivot could be the art student getting a gallery sitter gig, the receptionist moving to the manager, the writer becoming an editor, the graphic designer adding website design. All those are ways that you can pivot. And it can be done as like an additional job, a side hustle, scaling in your current job. And you're just changing to fit your gained expertise and the current environment. And that's what a pivot means.
So you mentioned the idea that work experience doesn't really play into how you might be able to pivot. Now, I know that some of the examples that you said are basically kind of working on your own and changing kind of your own field to something that you might work for yourself as a side hustle or in your business or in services that you offer. But what about the jobs that are available today for companies? Are you able to pivot into those jobs that are available? We're seeing a lot of companies putting out calls for thousands and thousands of workers in various fields. How can you qualify for those without that work experience?
Absolutely. So that's where transferable skills come in and identifying those, because you can leverage those skills for like other type of position, right? So an example, if you work as a retail associate or worked as a retail associate before the pandemic and you were laid off or fired, instead of putting on your resume or in an interview saying, I stock shelves, I maintain inventory, I answered customer questions, you're going to flip that a little bit and look at what are things that taught me, not what that job is, that can apply to any other role, right? So you might say something like, I provided ideal customer service experience, which contributed to like the overall success and growth of business. So you are finding what the job taught you rather than what the job is, and finding those kinds of skills is what can allow you to pivot and, be eligible for a lot of those jobs that are hiring right now.
Okay. And how do you identify some of those transferable skills? If you're, it's it takes kind of a mental jump to figure out exactly how some things apply to a new situation. Is there any technique that can help you identify those things?
Yeah, so I have a few important questions you have to ask yourself and go through. But before I get into those, I think it's important to say that when you've been laid off or fired, or, for whatever reason you're out of work, it's a pretty professionally traumatic experience, right? And that's a reality for a lot of individuals right now. And that trauma can cause like what I like to call anxiety blinders to go about both your worth and your value. So that includes like blinders about the skills you have to offer. So I think just being aware of that, and if any of those kind of imposter syndrome type things pop into your head, or you can't really see yourself as being eligible, just take a deep breath and try these questions anyways, because it might change your mind a little bit. So that said, I think the first thing that's important to do is like examine everything you did every day at whatever your last couple of jobs were. And you're going to ask yourself, what does your day to day look like? And I would write this down in a list, right? Like every minute task, because you can take those things and turn them into what would be a transferable skill. For example, so I was a teacher before I quit teaching to run my own business. So like some things that I did every day was student data analysis, and that like translated to being able to break down complex data and topics. And breaking down complex data and topics is exactly what I do in all of my writing. So I was able to take something I did every day, find out what part of it could be applied to another position, and then I wrote that as like a skill on my resume. So you want to do that. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I call it like a resume audit. You're going to go back to past positions. Anyone, it could be an internship, it could be volunteer, and you're going to ask that question that I just said a minute ago. What has this job taught you? Not what is the job, right? Because we know what the job is, but what has the job taught you that you can apply to a new position? And then the third is a review. And this is really important, especially like where we're at now. Everything is either work from home right now or online gigs. There's, of course, companies hiring in person, but if you're an at-risk individual, that's not where you're going to be looking for work. So a tech review is really important. And I would ask yourself, what tools do you use in and out of work? So that could be both professionally and as a hobby. Maybe you like edit photos and you do a really good job at that, and you could use that to find another position. Maybe you know the Adobe Suite. Maybe you know Google, all of the Google Suite really well. All of the things are going to be skills that you want to put onto your resume, and they don't have to be attached to a job, right? You can just say you know them and you're a master at them. And then if they want to see evidence of that, you can show them.
That's great. So taking a look at your answers to these three questions, when you're looking at the tools that you use, everything that you learned from your previous experience, and the analysis of the tasks that you do, how can you leverage all of that into going forward and making your pitch or the case for the clients that that might hire you?
Right. Yeah. So you want to show it rather than tell it, right? That's like a cliche saying, but it's true. And you need evidence. You need to be able to prove that you can do what you're saying, right? So this also goes if an application says in the requirements or qualifications, if it says something like 3 years of experience or equivalent, you're basically going to be filling that equivalent with evidence. So there's a lot of ways you can do that, right? You can do this like by providing social proof through your social platforms, and that could be recommendations on LinkedIn for a specific skill. It could be your social platform itself if that's what you're trying to market. And then I would also say you want to sell yourself with facts. So you could say, in the short time I was there, I did XYZ, and I raised grew our following 60%. if you can give percentages, statistics about your skill, then you're going to be even more credible when you're listing those things on your resume. And then always a portfolio of some kind, evidence of the skill, like in physical form, is always helpful as well.
So I think in the creative field, people are really used to having portfolios. How does that apply to someone who's perhaps in a tech field, or someone who isn't what they're looking for isn't necessarily producing content of some kind?
Right. Great question. Yeah. So if you don't have like physical content that you can show, it might be something like getting a certification. LinkedIn actually offers like quick quiz certifications that can then be added to your profile. So that's a really easy way to do it. You could get a quick, easy, free certification from Google. So those kinds of things show that you like know how to use a tool. And I hate to go back to this, but it is true. It matters who you know. So if you know someone who knows about your skill, and can, be a reference for you, like a personal reference, or maybe they're going to be able to connect you with a job opportunity, that's still just as vital now as it was yesterday. Like, I don't know that that's ever really going to go away. That's how I moved between industries, that and leveraging my transferable skills. It's the people you know.
Is it too late to kind of dig into meeting the right people? Of course you want to prepare ahead of time, just like we say you want to have an emergency fund. Well, the emergency is now, it's a little too late to make an emergency fund. What can people do now to kind of make some of those connections?
Right. I actually think now is an even better time to reach out to your community and make new connections. So there's a lot of online events happening. If you go to Eventbrite, you can look up online events specifically and find some within a niche that you're interested in, including within a new industry. So if you're looking to get into a new career field, you can go to Eventbrite and search just for online events. And that can be a great way to network and communicate with people. I would also say there's a ton of Facebook groups that are like amazing for anyone looking to get into a new field. There's Facebook groups for like working moms from home and every kind of niche you can imagine. And that's a great way to grow and learn from others. And then you become a part of the community and you hopefully have new opportunities that come with it. And I think people now are even more excited to interact online than they were before because we're all trapped at home. So I would say those two things would be really good ways to reach out and start building community. But if you've lost your job, there's no reason for you to not contact your employer or your previous colleagues and ask them for a recommendation. You can also ask your employer if the company has any sort of recruiting services, because a lot of companies, big companies, I should say, not small companies, will pay a recruiting service just to have on the side, or when they do a mass layoff. And you do have rights to access that. And that can be a really good option for you if you're looking to move into a new career field, is working with a recruiter. And you might be able to get it free if you were laid off from a large company.
Yeah, I certainly remember when I was working for a large financial company, they did have placement services. So if for whatever reason you were moving on from your job there, they would actually help you with that, which is, it's a good benefit to have. I'm not sure if that company still has that, but it was really interesting to see all the different kinds of benefits that are available. So it's definitely recommended to check that out. And what you were just talking about, I think, is at least a partial answer to a question that came in on Facebook here, where the question is, what should you do if you were freelancing from home prior to the pandemic and lost your set of clients? I think that's a great time to pivot in, whether it's a vertical pivot or a horizontal pivot in some direction. What can you do in that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I identify with that because I lost a couple clients, and it definitely is a hit. It's a hit to the heart. So I think take that moment to be sad or upset about it. and that's healthy. Like, you got to take care of your mental health too. And I would say consider what other skills you may have been building on the side. In my case, I was strictly doing writing and graphic design, and then I did web design. On the side, I was building that portfolio, but then when the pandemic hit, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to scale this part of my business because I know what I'm doing now and I can offer that service. I think also another way you can pivot if you're freelancing and you've lost a bunch of clients is considering like the audience that you were reaching. A lot of freelancers I know blog or have some sort of audience in addition to client work. And so if there's any way that you can reach that audience in a new way through coaching or something like that, that could be a great way to start changing and pivoting the direction that you're going.
I like that you mentioned mental health, which is, of course, very important all the time, even more probably when we're all stuck at home dealing with ourselves and our thoughts more than we would so otherwise. What could you do to manage some of the stress that comes about from this idea that especially someone who's been perhaps doing the same sort of thing for a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and now they realize that they have to pivot. How do you deal with that stress?
That is a good question. I hopped jobs so many times and held multiple jobs that I can't identify with like being in one career field for 20 to 30 years. That said, I think that there's a lot of resources out there. If you do need help, like serious help, I recommend looking up, having a counselor or a therapist. Just want to put that out there first. Like, I'm none of those things. That said, it is so easy to get in your head because it's imposter syndrome or it's, I'm not sure if I can do this. So if you're feeling uneasy about it, I would really contact the people who know you and know your work, because it could be something as simple as like, hi, I'm looking to change directions. Really like a testimonial from you, not focusing on like what you did specifically when you worked with that colleague, but focusing on those transferable skills or even your soft skills. So what did they like about you? What could you offer the company as a human, as a person, not just like, I'm really good at spreadsheets, right? So asking for those colleagues is going to be a huge boost to like how you feel about yourself and give you a little bit of that confidence push. And then you can also use those testimonials when you're applying for work.
So let's talk about some of the challenges with testimonials. We actually got a question about that right here on Facebook. I found it hard to get recommendations, not because people aren't happy with me, but just because they don't have time or see it as a priority. It's like pulling teeth. How do you get them to prioritize your needs when, without nagging them?
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so I have two ways I do this. The first is if it's like a supervisor, a boss, or a client, like someone you've provided work for, always offer them the out of like, if you can write me a testimonial, that would be great. If you don't have the time, I would be happy to draft and have you approve it. There is no reason why you can't write your own testimonial as long as they approve it and say that it sounds good and say that it's like something that represents them and their thoughts. So you're going to do kind of that back end work. You're going to give them a little bit of a rough draft, so they just have to change a few things and sign off on it. And that's something that's always for me with previous employers who are really busy or have a big company and don't have the time. If you're asking for a recommendation from a colleague or someone you've worked with before, I usually get them to do it for me if we offer a trade. So like, if you'd be willing to write me a testimonial, I'd be happy to write you one anytime, just let me know. And you can even say like, I can write one for, if you know that they're like producing something new or they're pivoting, you can say, I'd love to write you one to help you in the new direction you're going as well.
All right, great. So in addition to recommendations, portfolio, an updated resume, and your story, is there anything else that you can do? That's already a lot, but is there anything else you can do to make yourself attractive to potential customers, clients, or employers?
I think like all of those things are things that can make you look good on paper and can make you look good when you're communicating, over an interview, a video interview, maybe like this. But I think the most important thing is that you're transparent and that you are like always authentic to yourself. By transparent, I don't mean saying things like, well, I don't really know how to do this, but I've kind of done this other thing. Like, you don't want to give yourself backhanded compliments. So be careful about your words, but be transparent and say, my genius lies in blank, not blank, right? So that you're being really clear about exactly what you offer them and what you know you're good at. And then also touch on things that aren't your strengths. And then they know, coming into the relationship with you, whatever the position is, what your strengths and weaknesses are without you kind of like playing yourself. So that's what I mean, transparency. And then, of course, being authentic and true to yourself. Like, people are going to hire you for you too. Hire you for what's on the paper, but also they're going to hire you for you. So you just got to be true to who you are.
That's great. Is there anything that we missed? Are there any more things that we need to know in order to successfully pivot?
I don't think so. If you ever want to chat about it, I'm like happy to talk to you. Instagram is where I am. Most of the time I've like worked as a ranch hand to university assistant to a teacher to running my own business. So like I am happy to chat with you about changing and jumping into new industries and new things. I think we covered like the basics for people to get started on pivot.
Okay, yeah, I think this was amazing. Like we said at the top, pivoting is one of the most important skills that you can have as a human being. I think we love to plan, we love to have a schedule, we love to stick to everything. We love to design the life that we want and follow that path. But sometimes there are things that are out of our control that prevent us from doing things the way we planned. And being able to adapt to any situation, I think, is an incredible human skill. And now we all have the chance to kind of flex that muscle and do this. And pivoting could be temporary, or it could be for the long term. You might determine that the thing that you pivoted into is something that can sustain you on a more permanent basis. So why not give that a try for a while? So I hope everyone was able to get something out of this. Would you like to share, Bethany, where people can find you? I know you mentioned Instagram, but what else?
Oh, yes. So my blog is hisandher5post.com. I'm His and Her 5 Posts on Instagram and Twitter as well. You can find me if you need any writing or design needs at bethanyworks.com. And then I have like a travel gram, which is just my name, Bethany McCamish. If you want to see pretty photos right now while you're trapped inside, you can follow that one.
Awesome. That sounds great. Well, thank you, Bethany, for being here. Thank you to everyone who has tuned in for this. And we will see you next week for another webinar.
Thank you.